The crystal towers of Zephyr Prime sparkled like diamonds against the purple sky, but today their beauty fell hollow. Elder Kethera pressed his webbed hand against the cold viewing window and watched his world die piece by piece. Black shapes moved across the horizon like a spreading disease. The harvesters had arrived 3 days ago, and already half the northern continent was gone. Not destroyed, consumed. Every building, every tree, every grain of soil sucked up into those massive mechanical maws and processed into raw materials. Elder, the southern cities are going dark, whispered his aide, Velnix, her feathered crest trembling with fear. The machines, they're everywhere. Kethera closed his ancient eyes. In all his 300 cycles of life, the Zephyrians had never faced anything like this. They were a peaceful people. Their greatest weapons were poetry contests and philosophical debates. When conflict arose with other species, they talked things through over sweet nectar and meditation. But you can't negotiate with machines. The communication tower shuddered as another harvester unit passed overhead. Through the crystalline walls, Kethera could see the massive drill ships boring into the planet's crust, extracting precious metals with terrifying efficiency. His people fled like frightened birds, carrying nothing but their young and whatever small treasures they could grab. The defense grid is completely offline, reported Tech Keeper Moralen from a station. His usually pristine blue feathers were dirty and ruffled. The energy barriers lasted exactly 12 minutes against their bombardment. 12 minutes, Elder. Our finest protection was less effective than morning mist. Kethera nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had always relied on their advanced shields and the protection of the Galactic Council. But where was the Council now? Where were their proud fleets and promises of mutual defense? A massive explosion rocked the tower. Through the chaos, Kethera saw one of their beautiful floating gardens crash to the ground, its anti-grav generators finally giving up. Hundreds of rare flowers that had taken decades to cultivate scattered like colorful snow across the rubble. Sir, Velnix's voice cracked. We're receiving reports from the outer colonies. Zephyr 7 fell 2 hours ago. Zephyr 12 is gone. Just gone. Nothing left but bare rock. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Kethera's shoulders like a mountain. 3 billion souls looked to him for guidance, and he had nothing to offer but surrender. The Zephyrian military consisted of a few patrol boats designed for crowd control and rescue operations. Their most advanced weapon was a sonic disruptor meant to break up riots that had never actually happened in their peaceful society. What about the distress beacon? He asked quietly. Moralen shook his head, still broadcasting on all council frequencies, but no response. The automated systems keep telling us our message has been received and help is being dispatched, but... He gestured helplessly at the devastation outside. Another impact, closer this time. The tower's crystal structure sang with stress harmonics as cracks spider-webbed across the walls. Emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows through the once beautiful chamber. Kethera moved to the master communication console. His fingers hesitated over controls. What he was about to do went against everything the council had taught them, everything civilized society believed about proper conduct among species. Elder, what are you doing? Velnix asked, noticing his movement toward the restrictive frequencies. Something desperate, he replied, activating the emergency broadcast system. Something that might get us all killed even if it saves us. The console hummed to life, its display showing transmission patterns spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. He began recording, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. This is Elder Kethera of Zephyr Prime, calling any who can hear this message. Our world is dying. Mechanical harvesters consume everything in their path. Our people flee in terror, while our cities crumble to dust. We are a peaceful species with no military might, no weapons of war, no way to defend ourselves against this mechanical plague. Another explosion, much closer. Debris rained against the tower's walls. We have tried everything. Negotiation, surrender, evacuation. Nothing stops them. The Galactic Council promises aid that never comes. Our colonies fall one by one, while committees debate proper procedures. If anyone out there has the power to help, we beg you to answer. We have perhaps days before our entire civilization becomes raw material for these machines." He paused, knowing his next words would brand him as either desperate or insane. "We call to all species, all governments, all who might have strength where we have none, even the quarantined worlds, even the restricted systems, even," he swallowed hard, "even the Deathworlders of Soul, even humanity." The transmission burst outward at light speed, carrying Zephyr Prime's last hope into the void. Captain Jake Mitchell stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, staring at the holographic display that showed Zephyr Prime's dying world. 3 days had passed since they'd intercepted that desperate transmission, and his fleet had pushed their engines beyond safe limits to get here in time. "Sir, we're getting some interesting readings," called out Lieutenant Beth Crawford from her station. "The Harvester swarm is even bigger than intelligence reported. I'm counting over 2,000 individual units, ranging from frigate-sized collectors to those massive processing ships." Mitchell rubbed his stubbled jaw. He'd been awake for 36 hours straight, running battle simulations and coordinating with the other ship captains. "What's our fleet strength looking like, Crawford?" 12 dreadnoughts, 30 destroyers, and 42 fighter squadrons. "We're outnumbered about 15 to 1, sir." A grim smile crossed Mitchell's face. "Sounds about right for a Tuesday. Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for immediate combat drop." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Mitchell could feel the tension. Everyone knew what they were facing. The Harvesters weren't just ships. They were a plague that consumed dozens of worlds across the Outer Rim. Most civilized species ran when they showed up. The smart ones evacuated early and hoped the machines would move on to easier targets. But humans had never been accused of being smart. "Captain," came a voice from the communication station. Ensign Rick Palmer looked up with confusion written across his young face. "We're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. The Zephyrians are... Well, sir, they're asking if we're really going to attack. They seem to think we might be here to negotiate or something." Mitchell let out a short laugh. "Negotiate? With machines that eat planets?" He shook his head. "Palmer, send this message to the Zephyrians. Help has arrived. Stay clear of the orbital zones. We'll have this cleaned up shortly. Sir, should I mention our casualty estimates or dash? No need to worry them with details. Son, just tell them the cavalry's here." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, appearing like angry hornets around Zephyr Prime. The Harvester swarm immediately shifted to meet them, their cold mechanical minds calculating threat assessments and optimal engagement patterns. What they couldn't calculate was human stubbornness. "All ships, this is Mitchell. You know the drill. Fast and dirty. These tinkins think like computers. So let's give them some good old-fashioned human chaos. Weapons free, ramming speed authorized. And remember, we're not here to win pretty. We're here to win fast." The first salvo lit up space like a newborn star. Nuclear torpedoes streaked toward Harvester formations, while the human ships dove straight into the enemy ranks. It was a tactic that made other species cringe. Humans had a disturbing tendency to use their own ships as weapons when ammunition ran low. Commander Lisa Park, aboard the destroyer Relentless, watched her targeting display with satisfaction as another Harvester unit came apart under concentrated fire. "That's what you get for picking on civilians, you mechanical scrap heaps," she muttered. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Danny Ross, looked up from his console. "Ma'am, we're getting some confused chatter from the planet. The Zephyrians are asking why we're not using proper engagement protocols and requesting terms of surrender for the Harvesters." Park blinked in disbelief. "Terms of surrender? Danny, those things don't surrender. They don't negotiate. They just eat everything until there's nothing left to eat. Should I explain that to them, ma'am?" "Later. Right now, let's focus on turning these Harvesters into expensive confetti." The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships twisted and rolled through space in patterns that defied conventional military doctrine, while their pilots screamed obscenities at mechanical enemies that couldn't hear them. It was messy, loud, and completely effective. The Harvesters had been designed to fight civilized species, enemies that followed rules, maintained formations, and prioritized ship preservation over mission success. They hadn't been programmed to deal with humans who treated space combat like a barroom brawl with fusion reactors. When the last Harvester processing ship exploded in a brilliant fireball, the human fleet was battered but victorious. Emergency klaxons wailed aboard damaged vessels while repair crews worked frantically to patch hull breaches and restart overloaded systems. "Damage report," Mitchell called out, slumping back in his captain's chair. "Fleet-wide casualties are surprisingly light, sir. We lost 2 destroyers, and the Intrepid needs major repairs, but overall we came out ahead." Mitchell nodded, then opened a channel to the planet below. "Zephyr Prime, this is Captain Mitchell of the Terran Federation. Orbital space is secure. We're beginning cleanup operations and preparing landing parties to assist with ground-based recovery efforts." The response came quickly, filled with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Captain Mitchell, you actually did it. You drove them away. But our records indicate that harvesters cannot be negotiated with or deterred. How did you accomplish this?" Mitchell grinned. "Simple. We didn't try to negotiate with them. We just introduced them to good old-fashioned human diplomacy, the kind that comes with a nuclear warhead attached." Sergeant Tom Walker's boots hit the crystalline pavement with a satisfying crunch as his dropship touched down in what used to be the main plaza of Zephyr Prime's capital city. The place looked like a tornado had torn through a jewelry store, broken crystal structures scattered everywhere, their rainbow surfaces reflecting the afternoon sun in 1,000 different directions. "All right, Marines, listen up," Walker called his squad as they disembarked. "The locals are friendly but scared out of their minds. They've never seen real combat before, so try not to look too intimidating." Corporal Lisa Hayes adjusted her rifle strap and snorted. "Sarge, I'm carrying enough firepower to level a city block. How exactly do I look non-intimidating?" "Start by not mentioning the city-leveling part, Hayes." The squad moved through the rubble-strewn streets, their heavy combat boots making entirely too much noise on the delicate crystal pathways. Everything here had been built for beauty rather than durability. Even the emergency shelters looked like art installations. That's when they heard the crying. "Contact ahead," called Private Ben Thompson from point position. "Sound like civilians in distress." Walker held up his fist, stopping the squad. Through the wreckage of what might have been a school or community center, they could hear high-pitched voices calling out in the musical Zephyrian language. It sounded like children. "Hayes, Thompson, get the demo charges. We're going in." As they approached the collapsed building, a group of adult Zephyrians emerged from behind a partially intact wall. These aliens were about 7 feet tall with iridescent feathers covering their bodies and large, dark eyes that seemed to take up half their faces. Right now, those eyes were filled with terror. One of them, an elderly female with silver-tipped feathers, stepped forward hesitantly. "Please," she said in heavily accented English, "do not harm the young ones. They have done nothing wrong." Walker stopped dead in his tracks. "Ma'am, we're here to help. Can you tell me how many are trapped in there?" 7 younglings, she whispered, clearly not believing that the scary humans actually wanted to help. "They have been calling for aid since yesterday, but we lack the tools to move such heavy debris." Thompson was already scanning the rubble with his equipment. "Sarge, I'm reading life signs about 20 feet in, under that big crystal beam. They're weak but stable." Walker knelt down to the elderly Zephyrian's level, making himself less imposing. "What's your name, ma'am?" "I am Velmora, elder of this district. Or, I was before the machines came. Well, Elder Velmora, I'm Sergeant Walker, and these are my Marines. We're going to get those kids out of there, but I need you and your people to step back about 50 meters. We're going to use some loud tools." As the Zephyrians retreated to what they hoped was a safe distance, Hayes was already placing shaped charges around the debris pile. "You know, Sarge, back home we'd have a whole engineering unit for this kind of work." "Yeah, well, back home kids aren't trapped under alien rubble. Hayes, make it work." The explosion was controlled and precise, but it still made every Zephyrian in the area jump and cover their heads. When the dust settled, there was a clean pathway through debris leading to a small pocket where 7 young Zephyrians huddled together. They looked like baby birds, all eyes and fluffy feathers, and they were absolutely terrified of the armed humans approaching them. "Easy there, kids," Walker said softly, setting down his rifle and pulling out his emergency rations. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The younglings pressed themselves against the back wall of their little shelter, chirping anxiously in their native language. Walker slowly unwrapped a protein bar and broke it into pieces, offering them to the children. "Thompson, get the medical kit. Some of these little ones look dehydrated." As Thompson began administering basic first aid, Elder Velmora crept closer, her large eyes fixed on the humans with growing amazement. You risk your lives for our young?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "But your species is known for violence. The Galactic Council warns that humans are dangerous predators." Hayes looked up from where she was carefully lifting one of the smaller younglings. "Ma'am, we are dangerous. Dangerous to anyone who threatens kids." Walker nodded, gently coaxing another youngling to take some water from his canteen. "The Council's not wrong about us being predators, Elder, but they forgot to mention what we're really good at hunting." "What is that?" Velmora asked. "Bullies," Walker replied simply. "We really don't like bullies." One of the younglings, a little female with bright blue feathers, finally worked up the courage to approach Walker. She chirped something in Zephyrian and tentatively reached for his offered protein bar. "That's it, sweetheart. You're safe now." Elder Velmora watched as these supposedly terrifying humans carefully tended to injured children, sharing their food and water without being asked, treating young Zephyrians with the same care that would show their own species' offspring. "I do not understand," she said finally. "Your reputation suggests you are monsters, but you act like protectors." Thompson finished bandaging a small cut on one youngling's arm and looked up with a grin. "Ma'am, maybe the difference is what we choose to be monstrous toward. Some folks see a bunch of scared kids and walk away. We see scared kids and start breaking things that might hurt them, even when they're not your own species." Walker helped the last youngling to his feet and checked him over for injuries. "Elder, where we come from, there's an old saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Doesn't matter what planet you're from, kids are kids." As the rescue squad led the younglings back toward the emergency shelter, Elder Velmora walked alongside Walker, her worldview shifting with every step. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "the galaxy has misunderstood what makes someone truly dangerous." 3 weeks had passed since the battle, and the crystal spires of Zephyr Prime's capital were slowly rising again. But this time, they looked different, stronger. The delicate beauty was still there, but now it was supported by human-designed reinforcement frameworks that could actually withstand an attack. Admiral Rebecca Stone walked through the rebuilt council chamber, her heavy boots clicking against the newly installed composite flooring. The Zephyrians had insisted on keeping their traditional crystal architecture, but they'd been surprisingly eager to accept human suggestions about making it more durable. Admiral Stone, Elder Cadera glided forward, his feathered robes rustling softly. "The final casualty reports have been compiled. Thanks to your people's efforts, we lost fewer than 3,000 civilians during the evacuation and rescue operations." Stone nodded grimly. "Still too many, Elder. We should have gotten here sooner." "Sooner?" Cathera's large eyes blinked in confusion. "Admiral, you traveled across half the galaxy in 3 days. Your ships pushed their engines beyond safe limits to reach us. How could you have possibly arrived sooner?" "We've been tracking harvester movements for months," Stone explained, pulling up a holographic display that showed the surrounding star systems. "Look at this pattern. They hit the Melodian colonies 2 weeks before attacking you. Then the Vorthak mining stations. We should have seen Zephyr Prime as the next logical target." Elder Velmora, who had been quietly observing from the side, stepped forward. "Admiral, forgive an old teacher's curiosity, but why do you blame yourself for not predicting the unpredictable? The harvesters' movements seemed random to our analysts." Stone smiled sadly. "Because protecting innocent people is what we do, Elder. It's not just a job or a duty. It's who we are as a species. Every life lost because we weren't fast enough or smart enough weighs on us." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the newly installed defense systems. Finally, a young Zephyrian technician, named Morkel spoke up from his workstation. Admiral, our people have never encountered beings like humans before. We have studied the galactic databases extensively since your arrival. They say your species is violent, unpredictable, and dangerous to galactic stability. Yet you share your technology freely, ask for nothing in return, and seem genuinely distressed by casualties among people you barely know. Stone leaned against one of the crystal pillars, looking tired despite her composed demeanor. The galaxy's not wrong about us being dangerous. Morkelv, we fought wars that would make other species sick. We've developed weapons that could crack planets. We're probably the most militarized civilization in known space. Then why help us? Elder Kethera asked. Your own safety will be better served by avoiding conflict with the harvesters. Why risk your ships and your people for strangers? Before Stone could answer, Captain Jake Mitchell entered the chamber, his uniform still showing scorch marks from yesterday's salvage operations. Because that's what neighbors do, Elder. When someone's house is on fire, you don't stand around debating whether it's your responsibility to help. You grab a bucket and start fighting the flames. But we are not neighbors, Belmora pointed out. Our worlds are separated by vast distances. We had never even met before this crisis. Doesn't matter, Mitchell shrugged. You call for help. That makes you our neighbors. Elder Kethera moved to the great viewing window that looked out over his recovering city. Human construction crews worked alongside Zephyrian artisans, the two species somehow finding ways to communicate despite vastly different approaches to building. The Galactic Council will not approve of this alliance, he said quietly. They have maintained that contact with humanity should be limited to prevent contamination of peaceful civilizations. Stone joined him at the window. Elder, your people will need to make their own choice about that. We won't force an alliance on anyone. But I will tell you this, the harvesters aren't going away. This was just one swarm. Our intelligence suggests there are dozens more out there, maybe hundreds. And you will fight them all? Morkelv asked from a station. As many as we can find, Stone confirmed. That's the thing about humans. We're really bad at knowing when to quit. Mitchell pulled up another holographic display, this one showing human fleet movements across the Outer Rim. We got battle groups responding to distress calls in 6 different sectors right now. The Intrepid and her task force just finished clearing harvesters out of the Altarian system. The Defiance is headed to investigate mechanical signals near the Corvin Nebula. All of this without payment or territorial gain? Velmora asked, clearly struggling to understand the concept. Well, Stone said with a slight grin, we do ask for one thing in return. The Zephyrians tensed, waiting for the catch they'd been expecting all along. Remember this, Stone continued. Remember that when someone calls for help, you answer if you can. That's how civilization really works. Not through councils and committees, but through people helping people when it matters. Elder Kethera turned from the window, his decision clear in his ancient eyes. Then we will remember Admiral, and when the next distress call comes, Zephyr Prime will answer alongside Earth's children, even if the council disapproves. Stone asked, especially then, Kethera replied firmly. Perhaps it is time the galaxy learned that true strength lies not in avoiding danger, but in standing between danger and those who cannot protect themselves. Stone smiled, the first genuine smile the Zephyrians had seen from her. Elder, I think you understand humans better than most species ever will. 6 months later, the massive Galactic Council chambers buzzed with tension like a disturbed beehive. Representatives from over 3,000 species filled the curved amphitheater, their various forms of communication, creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, electronic beeps, and traditional speech. But today, all eyes were focused on the delegation platform where Elder Kethera of Zephyr Prime stood waiting to address the assembly. Behind him, an unprecedented sight filled the visitors' gallery. 17 different species sat together, beings who had never interacted before, united by a single shared experience. They were all survivors. Counselor Czar then of the hegemony, a massive insectoid creature with clicking mandibles, rose from his position at the primary podium. The council recognizes Elder Kethera of the Zephyrian Republic, You may present your petition, though I must warn that requests to modify the Soul Quarantine have been rejected 47 times in the past century. Kathera's feathers rustled as he activated the translation matrix, ensuring his words would be understood by every species present. Honored counselors, I stand before you not to request modification of existing policies, but to present new evidence that demands our reconsideration of what we consider dangerous. A ripple of confused murmurs swept through the assembly. This wasn't the usual diplomatic approach. 6 months ago, my people faced extinction. The harvester swarm had consumed half our worlds, and our pacifist nature left us defenseless. We broadcast a desperate plea for aid across all known frequencies. Kathera paused, letting his words sink in. 3,000 civilizations received that message. 3,000. Do you know how many responded? The chamber fell silent. 1. A single species answered our call for help. The quarantined humans of Soul. Counselor Vexari of the Trade Federation, her crystalline form refracting light in agitated patterns, spoke up. Elder Kathera, the humans' violent tendencies are well documented. Surely you understand why the quarantine exists for protection of peaceful species. I understand perfectly, Counselor Vexari, and you are absolutely correct. Humans are violent. Kathera's statement sent shocked gasps through the assembly. They are violent toward bullies. They are violent toward those who prey on the weak. They are violent toward machines that consume entire civilizations for raw materials. In the human delegation section, Ambassador David Clark sat quietly, letting the elder speak. He'd learned that sometimes the most powerful human diplomacy was simply letting others tell the truth. But counselors, Kathera continued, let me tell you what else humans do. They share their most advanced defensive technologies freely. They ask for no territory, no tribute, no binding trade agreements in return for saving your life. When their soldiers find wounded alien children in collapsed buildings, they risk their own lives for rescue operations. Another voice interrupted from the hegemony section. These are isolated incidents, Elder. Their military aggression has saved 17 civilizations in the past 6 months. The interruption came from Vel Corinne of the Melodian Collective, rising from the survivors' gallery. The humans arrived at our colony worlds just hours before complete harvesting. Their aggressive tactics turned certain death into miraculous rescue. Now the floodgates opened. One by one, representatives from the survivor species stood to speak. The Vorthak mining chief described human engineers working without sleep for 3 days straight to evacuate trapped miners. The Altarian ambassador told of human medics treating alien, wounded with the same care they'd show their own people. Counselor Zarthen's mandibles clicked angrily. This is highly irregular. Individual testimonials do not constitute proper evidence for policy revision. Then perhaps you'll accept this, Elder Kathera said, activating a massive holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed star charts covering half the galaxy, with red zones indicating harvester activity and blue zones showing human fleet positions. For the past year, humans have been fighting a war that the rest of us didn't even know was happening. While we debated proper procedures and filed committee reports, they were throwing themselves into battle against a threat that could have consumed the entire outer rim. The display zoomed in on specific sectors, showing battle damage to human ships, casualty reports, and resource expenditures. The numbers were staggering. Ambassador Clark finally stood up. If I may address the council? The quarantine species may not dash, Zarthen began. Oh, stuff it, you oversized bug, interrupted Chief Mining Supervisor Beth Reynolds of the Vorthak delegation. Let the man speak. He's earned that right by saving our lives. Clark smiled at the blunt support. Counselors, my people don't want your approval or your membership in fancy clubs. We've been doing just fine on our own. But these survivors deserve the right to choose their own allies without interference from politicians who've never faced real danger. The quarantine exists for good reason, shouted Counselor Vexari. Human military capabilities could destabilize Dash. Could destabilize what? Kathera's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Our comfortable illusion that evil will politely wait while we debate, our belief that someone else will always handle the dangerous problems. The elder spread his arms wide, encompassing the entire assembly. The Zephyrian Republic formally declares its intention to ally with the Terran Federation. We do this not in defiance of Council wisdom, but in recognition that some things matter more than political convenience. One by one, the other survivor delegations stood. The Melodian Collective, the Vorthack Tribes, the Altarian Commonwealth, 14 more species, all declaring the same intention. This is madness. Zarthan's voice rose to a shriek. They'll drag the galaxy into warfare. Elder Cathera looked directly at the Hegemony Counselor. The galaxy is already at war. Zarthan, you've just been letting others fight it for you. When the final vote was tallied, 1,203 in favor of recognizing humanity's right to galactic citizenship, 847 opposed. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some species stormed out in protest, while others rushed to congratulate the human delegation. As the session ended, Cathera approached Ambassador Clark. Will this change how your people respond to distress calls? Clark shook his head with a slight smile. Not at all, Elder. We'll keep answering when people need help. That's just who we are. Even for those who voted against you today. Especially for them, Clark replied. They'll figure out eventually.